Hello and welcome to our Pigs Alley Social. Today we are going to be painting this landscape. It's Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia in the springtime with crowds of people gathered around. And it's something I've painted before, it's something I love painting, and I'm really excited to get it onto this surface. We're going to work in 3 stages. This first stage is going to be getting our composition, the basic lines and shapes in the picture, onto the canvas, as well as the darkest darks and the lightest lights, getting just a little bit of a value map laid out onto the surface. The artist, Sloan, said that painting must have some stimulus. You can't paint well when indifferent, so he argues that you either have to love or hate whatever you're painting. And as I said, this is a scene I love. It's one I've painted before. And a couple things I like about it are the people, just these suggestions of people around. And one of my favorite artists, Maurice Prendergast, paints people in a suggestive way that I've always loved. He was a watercolor and oil painter in New England in the late 1800s, and I really just love how modern and simple his paintings are. Other artists who I really admire are the Impressionists. This is a book about Monet, and on the cover is a beautiful landscape with this one-point perspective. I love this path that leads us back, the dappled light, and just the really inventive use of color in everything. So with these artists as my inspiration and this picture, which I'm excited about, we are going to get started on our painting on this canvas. It's a 10-inch square. Ideally, I'd work a little bit bigger, but right now this is the only square canvas I have. I started by covering it with a wash of red acrylic paint, which is a medium value on our value scale here from light to dark. So this color will help me to see those lights and darks better when I get started laying in the values. To begin, I'm going to take my palette knife, which I use instead of a brush, and some of my burnt sienna paint, and I'm going to start going in and laying in the lines that make up the composition. I hold my knife at an angle up to the picture to try to match the angles on my canvas. And so I just go along and map out where all of the basic lines are. And I don't put in all of the information, I just put in the things that are important to me. So that bench is there, and then to place this bench, I'm going to hold my knife at an angle. And the top of it falls there, the bottom of it's here. And it angles off the canvas. I'm going to start placing some of these trees going back. And then there's the lamppost too. And these really give a sense of perspective because they get lower and lower and lower as they go back. And now from that lamppost to the top of this gazebo, the top of the gazebo is over here, establishing that relationship. There's a little wall in front of that. And then over here, there's a V of a tree that's interesting in the middle of all that green. So I'm just very quickly blocking out what I see as the most important lines, and as I place the lines, shapes start to happen. And now I might adjust some things. I want to make sure that gazebo is not too low. I think I need to make it a little bigger. And now I'm just going to subtly place some people. We have a guy here, a woman with him. There's a grouping of people over here. You can't really even tell that they're people at this point. They just look like lines, which then in turn become shapes. And when we add the values and colors, they'll get more definition. But I just want to be sure I have a sense of all the things I'm going to be putting in here. Over here. And then there's just a sense of some figures in the background there. So that was a very quick take on all of the basic lines and shapes in this picture. That is my composition, and so far I like how it looks. I like that this point is not exactly halfway, it's a little lower. That adds some interest. I like that this is off to the center. I like that I have this 1 point perspective leading us in. These benches kind of nicely bookend the path. And then these groups of people are going to lead us from here to there, back to there. Now, my next step when I do a painting is to start blocking in my darks and lights. And to do that, I squint a lot at my source photo. As I squint at this one, the darkest darks are some of the greens in here. So to mix a dark green, I'm going to take a lot of my ultramarine blue. I'm going to mix in a touch of my Indian yellow. Mix that up to a dark, dark, dark green. And then I'm just going to start blocking in where I see that dark, dark green. And I'm working the negative space first. One thing I like in painting is making things appear by painting what's around them. So start by blocking in where I see the darkest shapes in my painting. There's also dark back here. This tree has some dark greens coming down. All right, so that is where I see my darkest darks. And next, I'm going to clean that dark color off my knife, and I'm going to mix a light. To do that, I'm going to take some white and add a little blue into it. I don't like to use pure white. I like to always add a hint of a color to it. So now I'm going to start placing this where I see the lightest spots in this picture. And again, it's where the negative space is. These light spots are on the path. And I'm going to just lay this paint on here as I squint at the picture to try to get a sense of that dappled light falling on this path. Kind of leads us back into space. And then there's angle there. There's some under this bench here. And I'm just putting these patches of paint down like a mosaic or a puzzle. They're just all these random patches of paint, which may not make much sense to us now, but as I continue to work in these layers, it will start to appear to look like this scene. So I'm just going to go in with a few more of these light spots to suggest a building in this background. And then I think there's a little more light over here under this bench. And for now, that's going to be my first step. I got the composition on there, and I just started to block in the darkest darks and the lightest lights. I'm going to pause for a second, look a little bit more at my picture, and the next stage will be laying in more of the colors. So thanks for joining us, and come back to see our next step.